Hi guys, welcome to part 2 of the little Eric Oakley mini-series. If you haven't checked out part 1, be sure to do that by clicking here. Just like last time, if you have not yet, and I don't know why you haven't done this, subscribe to the Whale Pants channel and check out his links in the description below. Doesn't take that much time, and if he adds value to you here, why wouldn't you? Anyways, enjoy.
I am so excited to hear your analysis of my form because I've heard all the jabronis of the world who are, saying my form is not that good, but I've also heard a lot of people break it down. Danny Lindahl's broken it down a while back, and so I am excited to just soak this in. I even brought a notepad if there's any key things that you see. So
yeah, okay. Let's go with the side view first, and let's just do a little kind of cursory overview of the big chunks. Yeah, by far this is one of the most requested forms on the channel. It's you, it's Matty O, it's Paul Macbeth, Kristen Kusuoka, or whatever his name is.
Christian Koksa. Christian Koksa. I think
Koksa.
It's the... Yeah,
gotcha. I couldn't remember how to spell it. Yeah, he just absolutely smashes.
Yeah.
So I think that those are probably the four most.
He'll be. I have a feeling he's coming over next year, so it might be doable to get some more shots of him, and better views for you guys. I think it, and he's young, and I think he'd be down to do something. But I don't know. I don't want to speak for him. He's a good dude.
We shall see. Yeah, I'm just looking at common pieces here. Mm-hmm. For example, Simon and Drew are a little more forward here with this, but I've found that kind of with the hyzer throwers, like the people that you model after, Brinster, Nate Doss, Paul Macbeth also has this more sideways foot when you have this kind of pump technique coming in here. Mm-hmm. So this is all in line with what we've seen. Perhaps down a little bit early here. Probably. The drop of this shoulder is happening a bit earlier. What you'll see, this right foot before this crossover step. Mm-hmm. What you'll see here is that we've got the upward tilt here, and you're kind of already pulling this down here.
Yeah.
And these are pinching in, which is one thing that I usually recommend against. So this one kind of goes on the
little awkward.
Yeah, seems a little awkward to me there. But the thing that I do want to point out is space. You do an incredible job of already creating space here. Away from the body with the disc and the elbow. We're not worried at this point about them running into each other, which is that you have to have this space for the elbow and the disc to move so that they're free to accelerate whenever they want.
We talked about it when I was explaining it, is when you see players, lots of AMs plant perpendicular with each other or parallel to each other, not perpendicular, sorry. Parallel to each other, and getting that offset of feet, of planting out in front of your foot, and having a staggered, almost staggered feet in a backhand throw is another part that really helps create that space too. Because we talk about it as if you stand with your feet parallel and you reach back, your reach back is going straight through your chest. But if you get your plants, if you get that offset, your plant is now over your front leg, right? And
so you're talking about on the final step or during the
final step? The final step, that is.
Yeah.
So that's I do. That's one part that I really try and think about is getting that last step out. Yeah, because from back I should never be in the way.
Right, I got you. Yep. Okay, so you were saying that this offset right here.
Yes.
You offset your feet, and it's fine because where the disc is at, it's not trapped in such a way as to run into your body here, since you've got it out away from your body.
I still pull it into my body, but at the same time, it's if the disc was closer to my back left, I feel like
right. if you reached out here.
Yeah, exactly. Then
your body would be totally in the way.
Yeah, it would be, and it's like almost really difficult to throw if I'm thinking about it. Like I'd feel like a pretzel. Like I'd be like twisted up.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
right. And that's why I love this. We have a bunch of straight arm drill stuff on the channel for reach back and things like that. And that's why I'm a big fan of your form and Nicolas Antilov form, because you see the space created away from the body here, like so easily.
Yeah.
That's why I really like this. It's a little harder to see on someone like Simon, for example.
Yeah.
Which is why I really appreciate that your form is in the game and exists, because he doesn't create as much space as you do.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
Good.
I had like you'll want to know this. I had like snot stopping me from breathing through my nose. It's like a bubble.
You want to know this? you need to know.
Yeah. It's gone now. Listen.
Nice.
So I really love your form, and I've talked about you in lessons with students because they're like, "What's up?" I was like, "Dude, think Eric Oakley, and now think Nicolas," where it's like we've got, and this is just a great view for the shoulder tilt too. Like, yeah, we got the shoulder tilt. Are you throwing a hyzer here, by the way, or is this flat-ish?
Yeah. It's supposed to be a hyzer. So here's one thing about my form, and I think that this comes from early days of it's a good hyzer release. Yeah. I threw a lot of overstable stuff, and so I would start on hyzer, and I had a lot of like stand-up roll in my throws for the longest time. I mean, I was throwing a lot of when I first kind of really started getting good, I was throwing a lot of beat up PD2s and stuff like that. I used to be sponsored by Discmania back in the day. So like I was throwing a bunch of that stuff. So it was natural for me to like be on a hyzer, but then like kind of bail on it, but because I kind of had to, out of necessity, to make the disc fly. And it's something that I noticed the other day when I was doing field work as well. Like I was like, stay on a hyzer, and I was like, you stood up like just a little bit and pulled it to flat, which is fine because the disc is still going to hyzer because I'm like releasing it high on hyzer, but I'm like, or higher, but it's coming out more flat than I wanted that pure hyzer line. So it's a weird thing to kind of to combat because it's so subconscious at this point. But
like once you get to right here, you just like literally stand up with at the waist. You're saying, right? Yep. So easy to do, and a lot of people.
It's a minor bail on the throw, just ever so slightly.
Yeah, I usually coach people when they're trying to make sure that doesn't happen to throw really flippy stuff. Yeah, and see if you can keep it on hyzer the whole time.
Oh, I love that.
Because if you do like you did here, where our shoulders start on this plane here, and then you rotate them, and they finish on the plane, right? Maybe just out of the plane, just a touch. Yeah. On the end here. But most amateurs would finish like flat with their shoulders here and have stood up into the shot. So to avoid that, learning to throw flippy stuff that doesn't pop up and turn over, but that you push hyzer the whole time. It's really nice. Just for those of you who struggle with this.
The 7-speed slot, I think, is just like the perfect place to learn this because most people have the arm speed for a 7-speed. You know, like it teaches so much, and this is a Vodum here, so this is this is what I use in the Eagle slot for me if we're talking Innova discs. So this is, I have my Exodus for my T-Bird, Centurion for my Leopard, and that's the easiest way to kind of compare them because people know those three molds pretty well, and I actually talk about this in the bag that'll be out or will be dropping soon for the finish of the season. Is I talk about those three molds in particular. Is that I throw them exactly the same, but get 3 different releases. I get 3 different shot shapes, same amount of power, same angle, And slightly different feel in the hand. They're all 7-speed, so they all feel, to me, very comfortable. One isn't drastically thinner than the other, so it's like it's that level. But that's something I've started to notice, is staying with that angle being where I want to live, especially in my 7-speeds, and then maybe a slightly different angle for my 9-speeds, 9s and 10s, and then my 11 and 12s, like having a slightly different angle for that, just because I want to stay home, and that feels like home to me. That's
your comfort angle.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's good. Like if you could throw every shot, it would be with at that angle with those speed discs.
Yeah. Yeah, I live for that. If I have the opportunity to take a 7-speed and just hit it on a frozen rope, slight hyzer, that's where I want to be. Like, I think I really love throwing distance drivers, because who doesn't? But if I can get away with throwing a slower disc, I will. Mm-hmm. I will.
Yeah, it's just so satisfying.
Like, it really is. It feels good. You feel like a genius when it just stays straight the whole time, too. You're like, I'm doing it, defying science and everything.
Yeah, so back to your form, I love how visual the space is with your form. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, I'm creating space away from my body now. I have room and an idea of where the disc and the elbow are pathing, and it's not in the way of my body. I value that over what we're seeing with Simon here for that purpose, because it's like Simon doesn't look like he's creating a lot of space, but you can tell here that the elbow's plenty far away from the body and he's got the space.
Well, I want to not, I guess this is like kind of creating an excuse, but I think what we're going to start seeing more is that Simon, being a player who started throwing from a really young age.
Mm-hmm.
I started playing in my teens.
Yeah.
So I had already created body movements from soccer, from hockey, from other things. Like, my body had started to move, so it had these other
things. Already had like physiological neural pathways grooved.
Totally.
Like your body movements, you already had programmed body movements.
Yes. So I feel like that's something that might be why he doesn't have to create as much space, because this is how his body moves, and it doesn't need to create space because it's so natural to him. Where in other cases, like, you have to do these other simple things of creating that space and doing these other things because of those ingrained body movements. Like, I don't know if this is factual or anything, but it's just a hypothesis about what are we going to see. Like, I'd love to see a player like Gannon Burr, who started very young, how his form compares. And, I think we'll have a bigger sample size here very soon, because of disc golf is going to be even bigger for, that next generation of players coming in, and they're going to be like, I started playing when I was 4 and 5. And, instead of, people mainly picking it up in their adolescence and into adulthood. So
he learned the movements with the disc in hand. His body started programming the moves, accounting for the disc, and you had to learn the moves and then learn the disc. Like, your body learned the spatial movements, and then it's like, oh, now we've got to go back and tweak all of this because there's this thing in our hand.
Yep.
From these movements
so
that we
different
learned.
From, I played majority soccer was everything. So it's like my hands doing anything is never meant to be. Like, I have more control with my feet than I do with my hands most of the time. So it's like, it was pretty wild that I ended up in a sport that is so upper body dominant now.
Soccer is such a good cross-reference sport, though, for basically any other sport.
It makes you a total athlete. You have to be.
Yeah, I always loved when my tennis players were like, okay, I won't be playing tennis because I've got to go play soccer. So I won't see you in this next set of clinics. I was like, great. Like,
please, you're going to get fit.
Your footwork's crap right now, so I'm so happy to hear that you're going to go play some soccer for a couple months. So
I love that.
I mean, you didn't tell him that exactly, but you thought it.
You could think
good.
That.
You need to do something with your feet because they're not working here.
Dude. Yeah, get out of here.
Yeah. So let's go to the other other form pieces. Let's go back to that side view. So we've got that swing up here. Yeah, I got the iPad up. Here we go. Yeah, and here, during this, there's an interesting little correction here. Mm-hmm. Because remember how I was talking about how you were dipped?
Yeah.
And this hip's dipped here and Simon's is going up? Mm-hmm. Well, you fix that during your hop. Here. Boom.
Yeah.
And so most people just have the hip up and then the hips up during the cross step. Your hip's down prior to the cross step, and then you use the hop to pump your right hip back up here.
Shift them back. Okay.
Yeah. So you've like figured out how to correct that.
That is not something I had actively thought about. That is my body just doing at that point.
Yeah, and I think that's why you're a bit more like vertical with your jump, whereas Paul's like, yeah, here, because you've got to get from here with this right hip pointing down, and you've got to like jump basically off of this leg to get this hip back up here. Because if we pull in someone else, we could take our pick here. We'll go with Paul for this little second here. He's a little blurry, but we'll use him. This was at Texas State's. Mikey snagged this with his iPhone.
Don't tell the Pro Tour.
Well, he's allowed to snag it with his iPhone.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
He wasn't allowed to use his detachable lens, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's so weird, but whatever. That's a whole nother video. Another podcast
Flip
talk.
It. Yeah, and so now you're here where we've got the hip back up here, and you're going to be loaded on this leg. Your balance is a little bit like you're going to wait. Well, we'll talk about that in a second. But yeah, where we've got this here. So you figured out how to get that hip up.
Yeah.
Because then during the next part of the move here is for this hip to drop back down during the load. Right? So now you're up, and now we see that this right hip, as you wait for the front foot to hit, now we're back to this down.
Driving it into that front foot.
Yeah, and so you're going to get the pressure on the front foot, and then when you do, this hip goes back up and does one more final upswing. You have two downswings with the hip. Most people just have one.
And what are your thoughts on that? Like, do you think it's a bad thing, or is it? I feel like it's early enough in the throw where it's not too big of a deal, but
right. I think the things that come from it that you've worked through, like we talked about on this step here, like this was bad. I would not teach this, but then you go boop and you fix it.
Yeah.
Here. So my thoughts are usually like, well, let's not have the problem that we have to fix and like compensate to fix here.
Sure.
Let's just fix this part and just start up with the hips. And then you can still do the hop, but like let's just be up here with the shoulder and the hip, and then do your hop, and then you're up the whole time, and then you have one load move, one swing back move, and then you can explode when you need to, instead of like having to fight for the balance. Because the other thing that happens here is when you're like this, now you're kind of tilted this way or leaning forward a little bit.
Yeah.
And so then you have to seesaw back for your balance. And now you have to like slide your center of mass.
Sure.
Or like wait for it, boom, and now you're here, and now you're in a balanced position here. Versus if we look at Paul when he does this, for example, you can see that as he does these moves, so here's that up that I was talking about.
He's up the whole time.
Up. Mm-hmm. And then he stays up here, and it's allowing him to stay centered.
Yeah. It looks so much more compact and balanced.
Right.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you get here.
Yeah.
That's the thing, is you both get here.
Yeah. I think
the upper body looks a touch different, but if we look at the key pieces here, so similar. The weight is shifted. Even if you look at the hips here,
yeah,
super similar. And the right shoulder's dropped and your arm swinging just a little earlier on this shot, and that can be for a number of reasons, distance or
it's a putter
whatever.
throw. I think he's throwing a driver.
Yeah, he's throwing. This is that shot at Texas State's where it's uphill to the right, and he's taking the big Anheuser over the tree line.
Yeah.
It's on the back half of the course. Must be like, I don't know, 13 or 16.
I think
or
so.
so.
I think it was 13.
13. I mean, if I had to guess, 13. I think it's 13.
There it is.
I just remembered there's probably a T sign right there. There's something in the back of my mind's telling me 13. I'm not sure what it is. But yeah. So this is the thing is, like an athlete, especially someone who picked it up later, like you figured out how to get here.
Mm-hmm.
And this position is more important than all the other positions that came before it.
I agree.
And so when I try to eliminate things for someone back here, it's because I think in most cases
it's going to mess up the end product.
That
like the ending point.
Yeah, will make that ending harder.
Gotcha.
So at the end of the day, I don't care what you do prior to that. If you end up in this position, I'm going to be like, hey, we're probably all right.
Mm-hmm. It's something I'm actually going to just think about when I go do a little bit of field work and just like throw a little bit. It's like see if I can stay a little taller, just kind of shift my body a little bit around to see if it has any benefits. I mean, why not give it a try? And if not, then I just let it poof and focus on other little things too. But
yeah, if you can just so happen to be here and like pop that right side up higher than the left side at this moment, and
could be nice.
It works, then hey, sweet.
Shout out overthrow.
Yeah, hey, we're cool with it. Yeah, so
I mean, it's gonna get shout out anyways. But yeah, I think I have taught that is like I don't necessarily teach. I don't teach my form, and why would I? Because it's unorthodox. It's not necessarily proven. I know that there are things that can be better about it, but it is not worth teaching people to hop and bring all these other things in. It's like if you naturally do these things, then we don't need to adjust. It's like, again, I have always focused on that last step and that final product coming together as being the key to form, and why it's worked for me and why I've been able to actually like throw and compete on tour is because I get to that point. I think if I didn't get to that point, then it would be, we might not be having this conversation. So that's so I am doing some things right, which is a huge win. So thank you.
Yeah. And I mean, if we go back 5 years ago to coverage and stuff like that with you on it, I can think specifically, I don't even know where the hole is at, but I can remember footage and listening to like Ian talking about some golf course style, and it's like a big bomber course. You were on lead card, and it was out when it was on like the West Coast swing, and like a par 4. It's probably hole 1 actually, and there's like sidewalk left. It's straight, and then you got to throw to the left. And there's more sidewalk and OB around there, and it sits on a little mound. It's just like every ball golf course
that we ever played.
Anyways, it's like you're one of the people that had the shot to get the, eagle or whatever. It was a par 5. You were one of the longer throwers on there. It's like this guy can rip, and they're talking like, his form looks a little weird, but he can rip. Yeah, and it's like that. At the end of the day, it's your form has to become your own.
Yeah, I think that's the best part about disc golf is everybody putts differently. Everybody throws differently, and you have to find like your body to mine and my body to Paul's and to Paul's to Simon's. They're all so drastically different that we can picture and we can pick up on things that other people do, but you have to figure it out yourself. Your brain and the way it's sending information, you need to find the ways that are going to work for you. So yeah, it's pretty wild to think about all that because you don't truly know how things are going to work until you give it a try and you start to work at it, and then the hard work starts to really come in. And I don't know. I think that's why I was kind of happy to come up in this age where we didn't have as much information about form, because I don't know, I might not be throwing the same way I do. I could be throwing better, but I might not be. I might have created habits and capped out at 990, but who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows?
But you found, the nice thing is the era that we're coming out of is an era where it's like, look, they just figured it out.
Yeah.
They just figured out how to get there, to get the end result. And
Totally.
your form's like the epitome of that. We look in the earlier parts of the form and it's like, okay, maybe this isn't like the way to set all this up. And then it's like, boom, I got here, and I got in a very similar position to Paul, who did have who took one of the better form routes.
Yeah, I'll agree with that.
He was very intentional about how he learned his right arm and how he learned his off arm, and he was systematic about it. And you were like, let me hug this disc far.
Yeah.
And found things here and there that worked, and then that final position is very similar.
Yeah.
And
I was definitely the player that went and just ripped this in the field as hard as I could, just trying to throw farther. And that was in the days of my fastest disc in a bag was a beast. So I was only ripping 10 speeds because that's all that was available. So me and my homies were just like, oh, we need to get this one. It's got -4 turn. It's going to easily stay in the air longer. And we just figured all that stuff out. Was getting 140 class DX Valkyries and throwing them super high and doing a bunch of fun stuff. It's that's I remember vividly in high school, that was it. We'd go to Academy once they got a new stock in, and we'd buy up all the lightweight stuff and try to learn it. And I think that helped me, because I did end up throwing the disc farther than most earlier on, which is why distance was never necessarily something that I was like, okay, I really need to work on distance. Now it's now I'm thinking I just need to be accurate with my distance is what I was able to focus on, rather than I can't stretch the disc past 350. It was like, oh, I can do that. We're fine. And then, we start working on other stuff. So maybe that was why. And it was just from straight up throwing. AJ Risley talks about it a lot. And I don't know if you've heard this, but he talks about having a throdometer instead of your odometer, to if you have a car in your first, 10,000 miles, things are going to break. You're going to have to get things checked out. There's going to be a factory recall and stuff. But, Paul is like a 90s Civic. He's going to run for 400,000 miles easy, right? Or a Subaru, or whatever you want to call. We'll call Paul a WRX. Let's call him that. A good one that's gotten through all the kinks. But that's just what it is. It's you end up in these places where you've worked out all that stuff because you've broken all the plastic pieces off and replaced them with better pieces, and now it works. And I ever since AJ said that, it's always stuck with me as what I want to tell people is go throw, go throw. You can learn a lot more just by continuing to throw and how your body's supposed to move.
Right. Just because we're compressing time frame with knowledge, and just because I can look and say, hey, you need to do this, and which you didn't have back in the day. You didn't have someone saying, hey, instead of being down here with your right hip, have your right hip up here. Yeah. Right. I think people, because of the age that we're going into, they overvalue the knowledge. Whereas back in the day, you didn't have the knowledge, so obviously you didn't overvalue it. You valued the work and the curiosity and the reps. And now people are like, hey, I just need to know more. And it's like, no, you probably don't need to know more. You need to throw more. Yeah. And you need to know enough to see kind of what you're looking at. But once you get the form piece kind of there, go throw a bunch, right? What is it? Has this been on my face the whole time? Oh,
you
no.
got an editor. Was it a flake?
Editing can't fix that.
Yeah. Okay,
it's just too much work.
Over.
This blur moving with your face.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just blacked out. but I have a feeling it's from the coffee. Maybe not. But
what about the sidearm?
anyways.
Do you take a look at any of those shots?
Yeah, what are we doing with our lives?
Because what you said, and I really do appreciate about the backhand, straight up. Like, it's just like it. I know that I am doing something right. I am doing some things right, and I love that it's just like it's not that bad. Like, you know, we do come a little close to the chest at times, but also like that hip thing, I think was kind of eye opening, and seeing it, and honestly seeing how everybody's like set a little bit more forward and up already, so that when they come down, it's not up down up down. It's like that's a lot of movement as we mentioned, but getting to that last spot has been again, it's why I've been able to compete, and I knew I was doing stuff right, even if people thought it looked weird. We're doing good things, so thank you.
Yeah. I talk about space so much, and spacing and swinging, and you've got the feel of the throw, which is more important than having every mechanic correct.
Yeah.
Who hasn't felt that frustration of looking at someone who looks like they have worse form than you and then they throw further?
Yeah.
Who hasn't felt that? And it's like, well, there's a reason. Like, stop getting mad at that and
they're reaching their
learn
potential.
What they know.
Yeah, exactly. Totally.
Interesting stuff, huh? Make sure that you share that video with a friend so that they can see all the interesting stuff too. Anyways, we will catch you in part 3 where we talk about Eric's forehand, which may or may not be underrated.